I have privilege in life. It's not white privilege, it's American privilege. I say this as somebody who's traveled to 60 countries and I've lived in 7, and I know how the average person around the world lives, from Peru to Cambodia to Syria. I've seen the ill effects of an economic system that takes from the individual, that does not offer them freedom and the ability to innovate. And in the United States, historically, we have had the strongest laws regarding an individual's property rights and the inability of the state to merely take it from them. So just as an example, when I was in Myanmar, I believe it was in 2012, people described to me that the military junta there, who controls the state, if they believed that you were an opponent of them, they would come and they would go to the bank and they would seize everything that you've worked for. When I was in Ukraine, it was described that when the Russians pulled out the cash that people had accumulated over a lifetime of work that could have purchased a house, could the following day, maybe buy you a dinner. Today, that money's absolutely worthless. Thus, the individuals around the world that face similar prospects wanted the strongest currency with which to hold their earnings, their economic energy. And that was the US dollar. And that was a winning, at least relative to their currencies, proposition and strategy for them to take. Unfortunately, today, the United States is in an era of rapid inflation and a debt that we are incapable of ever paying off. $34 trillion. Unfortunately, right now, interest expense represents a substantial part of our total net receipts for tax revenues. And as interest rates rise, that is going to increase as a percentage of the federal budget, making it harder and harder and harder to pay such off. Additionally, people around the world, everywhere, are being robbed by the fact that technology is deflationary. Prices should be getting cheaper. So that goes for food, that goes for cars, that goes for computers, that goes for housing, because we are more capable of producing things more cheaply, because this is where innovation and efficiency and trial and error come into play to make things more cheap. Now we are going to see not only these technological innovations and deflationary pressures taken from us via the printing of money, flooding the system with dollars. It's like playing Monopoly and the properties are worth $200 and suddenly you throw in millions and millions and millions of dollars on the Monopoly board. Do you think that the price of these properties are going to increase or not? That's the same way all around the economy. You flood the system with dollars, they eventually go from those like BlackRock that are able to purchase the housing with a 0% loan from the Federal Reserve in order to stabilize the housing market rather than letting it go down in price in order to maintain the sanity of people, because this is the way that they are handling the economics of our nation in terms of sending all our money overseas for military conflicts, paying out the DIE programs, wasting millions of dollars on prosecuting Donald Trump. Not to get overly political in this specific video, but regardless, you are seeing massive amounts of inflation. Now, the good news for the United States, as I stated, is that they're able to export this inflation around the globe. This is one of the huge benefits of being the de facto reserve currency, that even though you're printing money willy-nilly, people in Zimbabwe see their money going to absolutely zero, where $1 trillion Zimbabwe bills are literally littering the streets there. Everybody wants the US dollar. you're able to export the inflation. Now, this helps keep the standard of living in the United States so much higher than the rest of the world, because your money, even though your government is printing it, is still valued. Now, this may or may not come to an end sooner or later as the U.S. falls more and more into sectarian conflict from left to right, where nobody can agree with each other, as well as the massive amounts of debt that are piling on. Plus, the U.S. unwisely, in my opinion, decided that they were going to take Russia's U.S. reserves during the war, thus sending the message to all other nations that maybe you don't want to hold your money in U.S. currency, because the U.S. government can merely take it from you like that. The problem is, in the past, there was no other solution. Today, there is, and that is Bitcoin. Why? Because Bitcoin is like digital gold. It is a scarce asset. In fact, Bitcoin is the scarcest asset on earth because there will only ever be 21 million ever created, as opposed to gold, that as the price increases, you find ways to mine more gold, where otherwise it would have been unprofitable. If the price doubles, suddenly it becomes profitable to increase the supply of what is being mined. Bitcoin, according to the protocol, there can only ever be 21 million. Meaning that there is a scarcity, and the amount of Bitcoin being printed is dropping by half every 4 years. That's, you recently might have heard of the halving, and thus people are putting their money into an asset that is essentially digital gold. And it's the same thing that happened with music. It used to be that you had to be a member of the royal court in order to hear Beethoven and Mozart be played, this beautiful music. Then, somehow, they figured out a way to put it on a record. Then, the tape. Then, the CD. And did this enable everybody to have access to music? No, you still needed a CD player. These things were expensive and non-existent throughout much of the world, as recently as the late 80s or 90s. But today, with the advent of mobile phones and digital music, everybody can hear this absolutely gorgeous, wonderful music from hundreds of years ago played at their fingertips. Just any moment of any day. This is digital music brought to the masses. And what Bitcoin is digital property for the masses, because there can only be 21 million. This is not something that is reproducible. And people that want to invest in something that 100 years from now, somebody who's very wise, very smart will desire, there is probably that one asset. You can invest, of course, in property like beachfront or a condo that is providing you utility. But if you want to store your wealth, wouldn't you rather store it in something that you can take across borders without asking anybody for permission? Because believe me, if you try to take a sack of gold across any border, it's going to be taken from you. It's going to get ganked and you're going to end up broke. Bitcoin can be moved across borders with 12 or 24 words stored in your head. It is protected via cryptography in a vault that is impossible, unless you make a mistake, to be seized. And you can send it to anyone without asking permission. I mentioned in Myanmar how they would go to the banks and seize your money. The same thing nearly happened in Canada. They froze your money because you were an enemy of the state, according to Justin Trudeau. And all over the world, they have stolen people's bank accounts. That means, why not hold it privately? Why not hold your US dollars in a little stash underneath your house and pray to God that you have a strong enough box that it's not eaten by rats or stolen? But now it's all done electronically, the same way that music became digital property. Gold is becoming digitized. My prediction is that in the United States, as we fail to maintain our position as the world's reserve currency, that the quality of life is going to go down, that we are going to see massive inflation when we can no longer export our currency around the world. Now, I'm not sure how long that's going to take to happen, but with debt levels at what they are, it might be sooner than later. And I pray to God that I'm wrong, because I love the United States. I am grateful for the fact that I have this American privilege that I described earlier. But that doesn't mean that the paradigm that currently exists is going to maintain itself into the future. And that's why I highly recommend that you at least get some Bitcoin, explore this possibility, because this is the way that the puck is moving. The incentives of Bitcoin are too great in terms of the fact that you can store it digitally, move it across borders, send it to anybody without anybody's permission. If you've ever tried to send a wire transfer overseas, good luck. I tried to send $500 to a friend in Singapore, and I had to explain myself to Fidelity Investments, where I was sending it from. With Bitcoin, I could have sent it to him like that.